Okay, so today we're going to talk about something called the Commercial Revolution. And what we're looking at is the impact of something called the Columbian Exchange, which we'll talk about tomorrow in class. So when Columbus sets out and discovers the Americas, and when the Spanish and the English and the Dutch and the French and the Portuguese start coming to the Americas, it's going to change the world, right? It's going to change Europe, and it's going to change how the world is going to do business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what we're really talking about is an economic policy called mercantilism. Practice saying it, right? Mercantilism. So what is it? So you're following along on the worksheet. That first bullet point there, it's the dominant economic theory of the 16th and 17th century Europe, right? Which means the 15 and 1600s. So under the second bullet point there, we write, this theory drives countries to establish colonies because colonialism is the key to economic prosperity of the mother country. So this is what mercantilism is, right? This economic philosophy which believes this, that having colonies, colonialism, is the key to economic prosperity. So we're talking about the establishment of colonies here in the Americas, and the mother country, we're usually talking about a European country. Okay, so on this map we're looking at the Spanish Empire, Spanish colonies, and the mother country of Spain. So this is why as soon as Spain establishes the empire, all the other countries are going to compete to have their own empires because they want to become wealthy. So let's take a look at mercantilist ideas, or the mercantilist philosophy. So hopefully my screen hasn't cut this off too much. Okay, so we begin with this idea that wealth is power. So you can write that on the first bullet point. Wealth is power, right? They also believe in the 15 and 1600s that wealth was limited, right? Because wealth for them are what we call bullion, these cubes of gold and silver. So they said, okay, look, let's be honest, there's only a certain amount of gold and silver in the earth. So that's why they believed that wealth was limited. Okay, so the idea is, of course, under the third bullet point there, that if a nation wants to be wealthy, i.e. powerful, they had two options to gain wealth. They could, A, take wealth from another nation via trade or illegal means, right? So they could do legal or illegal means, trading with other countries, or piracy. The English were very good pirates. Or they could go to the Americas, right, and mine more gold and more silver, right? Get as much of this as they can to be the wealthiest. So that's what mercantilism is. It's this economic theory that believes in this, right? That wealth equals power, but wealth is limited, so you of course want to be powerful, so you had to figure out, you had to figure out how to be wealthy in two ways. Mine it. Okay, so we got that. So what about trade? So European, you can write this in the bullet point here, European countries hated to trade or give money to one of their rivals. So they want to trade with Spain, give them more money. So they tried to do something called a favorable balance of trade. You'll see on the notes it will be listed as FBT, which means they want each country, right? Say England wants to sell more than they buy. Okay, so favorable balance of trade means a country sells or exports more than they buy or imports. Okay, does this make sense? Now your worksheet has a chart, which I have a similar one here. So you're thinking of a balance. I know the word balance means things are equal, but we're looking at, you want the balance, i.e. here, to be in your favor. So they're not looking to balance trade between two countries, but to make the balance of trade like lean in towards them, meaning they're selling more, right? So England is rather selling more goods to Spain, and they're not buying hardly anything from Spain or from France. So this is where the colonies come in. If you build a colony, right, in the Americas that has stuff that you want, i.e. gold and silver, fur, lumber, foodstuffs like sugar and corn, right, tobacco. So rather than paying Spain for that, they put the colonies in the Americas that makes all this stuff, and that then goes to the mother country, and the mother country can sell it back to the colonies or even other European rivals. Okay, so the French made a lot of money. They were especially good at the fur, right? So that came back into France, and then France made it into fur coats or something. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. If it doesn't, please ask questions in class. So remember, the balance of trade means the balance is in your favor, meaning that you export more than you import. Okay, so how do you produce an FBT, or a favorable balance of trade? So notice you have 4 bullets here to correspond with your 4 bullets on the worksheet. So this is what a country could do to maintain the trade balance in their favor. They would impose tariffs, which is a fancy word for taxes on imports. So they want you to buy English cloth, so they put a high tax on French cloth. They would encourage, since they don't want to buy French cloth, they would encourage the English, right, national industries to make manufactured goods. They also would set up these industries and other things to make the nation self-sufficient, right? And this is where the colonies come in. The colonies then would provide the raw materials to sell to other countries. Okay, so how do you keep the balance, right? How do you preserve the favorable balance of trade in your favor? So we start to see from the 15th to 16th to 1700s, each European country, as this spreads, they will build and improve their shipping fleets, right? Build a strong navy to protect their ships, and they trade, because remember, pirates are a problem. So they had to have a strong navy to protect their merchant ships. A nation would start to encourage banking and investment, right? To encourage people to ship and be merchants and make goods. And then they have to keep the colonies dependent on you. I mean, heaven forbid those colonies get any ideas of breaking away from the mother country to make their own money. So you had to make sure you controlled what they could grow or what they could buy. For example, this will cause problems, of course, in our history, but the British colonies in North America could not sell their raw materials to France or to Spain or to anyone else. But of course, Americans, I think, are probably going to try to do that. They get in trouble a lot by the British. So you have to make them dependent on the mother country. Okay, so if you have to pause the video and write this down or listen to it again, feel free to do so. So remember, they have to do these things to preserve the balance of trade in their favor, to produce it and then preserve it. So this is the economic philosophy that drives all of these actions for the next 200 years, right? And this will be the economic philosophy up until the Industrial Revolution. Alrighty, so flip your page over there. So this is why these empires were so crucial and why they were so important, because the colonies were expected to produce new gold and silver, right? There's some gold there. They were supposed to supply the raw materials for industries. So we're talking about cotton, bamboo, sugar, right, coffee, all of these things that would go to the mother country, and then those state factories would make stuff. And we're talking about early factories, so not machine factories. They would limit trade with foreign nations, so that's why the colonies could only give stuff to the mother country, nobody else, and they themselves would not engage in manufacturing, right? For example, the British would not allow their colonists, or this, especially, I should say, the Spanish were particularly tough on their colonies. Obviously, the British were a little bit lax with us, hence we get some big ideas and want to overthrow them. But the Spanish were especially strict on this. So the colonists in Latin America could not make factories or engage in manufacturing. right? So if they wanted guns and things like that, they had to get it from Spain and or Portugal. Okay, so what is the result of this? The consequences will be far-reaching. So the results, first, these nations became extremely wealthy from this. And as you know, wealth equals power. So this is the flag of Spain, if you don't know, France, and Great Britain. Now, while this country will fade out with power, but I think you can already see the beginnings of these two powerful nations that will dominate up until the 20th century. Okay, we also start to see the growth, in case you're wondering, those are merchants, of a merchant class, and this is the beginning of the middle class. This will be huge. So it's not like everyone in Europe became a merchant, but we start to see this population of people start to grow, and this will cause huge political and societal changes in the next 100 or 200 years. We start to see the beginnings of the growth of cities. Anyone recognize a city? This will be London. Now, while in the 15, 16, and even the 1700s, while most Europeans live in the country, the cities are just beginning to grow here, right, as the wealth comes into the cities. And more importantly, and more subtly, is we see the formation of the modern banking and monetary systems, right? It's hard to conduct trade by lugging around bags of gold. So they start to come up with currency, right, paper money. So that's easy to transfer, it's easy to exchange into different currencies, which you see here. And the idea of banking, right, that you could get loans, charge interest. A bank then would exchange your British pound for a French franc or whatever. So hopefully that makes sense. So this is what we call the Commercial Revolution, driven by this philosophy of mercantilism. Eventually, mercantilism will lead to the formation of capitalism, which will lead to the formation of communism and socialism, and then we get into the more 20th century philosophies. So we got to start at the foundation here with mercantilism, and what we call here is the, oops, don't look at that, Commercial Revolution. So if this is confusing, watch it a few times and come and ask me any questions.